Good afternoon and welcome back to Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. And we are continuing our journey to configure, to learn about the process and the functionality that is available in the Human Resource module. So my last video, we talked about the verify, employment, and viewing hierarchy. Today, we're simply going to discuss about the view changes and manage changes. So something that is very useful. You must have seen it in my previous video where I had gone into the employee record and then we saw some of the changes that could be done and that can be captured. So this is basically an add-on to what you can do in terms of audit alerts or audit functionality that's available within the system. So if you click on view changes, these are some of the changes that I had done in the system itself. And just to give you a highlight of what is available, what you can do, and what the system actually captures. So the system doesn't really capture every single thing within the system as a part of its audit trail. Instead, it is only specified to a specific set of fields. So as a homework, I would say that you should start changing some of the fields within the record itself and then go into view changes and see what are the new fields and the modified fields that have been captured. So that will give you an idea of what different fields that are being captured as an out of the box within the system. So in here, for instance, as we start talking about some of the changes, you could see the military service end date, the start date that is being captured. So it gives you a new value. If there was an old value, it would have given you an old value, but it looks like it was empty for all of them. The veteran status, for instance, is something that gets captured. It's being time stamped based on the time and the day and the date as well that is changing. Uh, of course, the building address is something that you're familiar with. You must have seen it. So building address is also something that you could have a look at when it comes to the audit trail. So if you go into manage changes, this actually captures a lot more. So you've seen this form before, and it's a very similar to the manage changes that we've talked about in my previous video. In this case, we're actually capturing only a handful of fields, just like in the other form, in the other video that I was talking about. So as you could see, the marital status, for instance, if you change that, it creates a new record, and then it creates an effective date as well, and then the expiration. The number of dependents, if you were to ever change it, this actually plays quite a bit of a role within the benefits module. The marital status date also can be captured here based on the status. It's not automatically driven by the change, but this effective date is actually driven. So these two dates kind of had to be aligned, but as a user, you have to put that date in here just for your reference. So we saw the veteran status, so we changed the veteran status, and then it was also captured in the other form, the service start date, the end date. If you were a disabled veteran, for instance, you can also have that. And the expiry date ruling is something that I haven't personally used in any of my implementations, but it's more applicable, I believe, to US. So moving on to work summary. In work summary, you could see that there are quite a few records. So machine operator tends to be the same. I see the address wasn't there. So now when the address was added, a new record was created. The anniversary start date, original hire date, seniority date, all of these are captured as you change them. It doesn't really stamp the the person who had introduced a new value, but it's actually picking up that it was changed from one field or from one value to another based on the timing and whatnot. And also the Boolean field works from home. So this was something that was introduced recently just because of how COVID and everything transitioned into working from home. Moving on to the affordable care coverage groups, not something that is applicable to at least any country outside of US actually. Even the Canadian market does not use affordable care coverage groups because it's not relevant to a Canadian or someone outside. It's most relevant to the US industry, and that's how their coverage gets taken care of. So you can simply configure this if you're working for a US client. And payroll earning codes are not something that you would want to configure in the system, just because the Dynamics 365 FNO doesn't really have a payroll system per se. They always have the configuration in place, but we always get a third-party payroll system integrated. So you can obviously configure this in here and send this out as a part of the integration to your third-party vendor who takes care of the payroll. So obviously a lot of things needs to come from finance and operation, and these pieces can be relevant. If not, then the third-party vendor who should take care of the payroll is the one that will take care of all the information required to run that process. So that should be covering up our pieces about changes timeline, and then we'll start talking a little bit about the checklist and task maintenance. It's a separate module on its own, but I want to touch base on this so we can move on to a different piece of configuration, a piece of a process that is applicable to the human resources.